today's episode of The Story Detective, you might say I'm taking my writing on the run, but it could be under better circumstances. I'm actually heading in for surgery for my carpal tunnel. Now, usually when there's something interesting or different that I experience, as a writer, I document those things. But I've never actually tried to document anything like this on video, and this is certainly a new experience because I've never had a surgery. So I'm going to try as best I can to do the pre and post-op opinions. I don't know how much they'll let me film. I will try to get as much as I can. That's what's coming up on today's episode. Stick around. I've got my paperwork, I'm registered, they're going to come and get me shortly. As far as going into this, I was supposed to have it before the holidays, and then NaNoWriMo and the holidays were upon me, so I put it off for a little while. And I'm kind of glad I did, because the prospect of this is a little bit scary. The first thing is you think of all the nightmares you hear about surgeries and stuff like that, but for your characters, you don't want to be that cliched. You want to have something, like I've always said, that's personal. For me, the personal is I've been an artist my entire life, and the carpal tunnel is in my left hand, and I'm left-handed. So the idea of someone who's been an artist with somebody slicing their hand is a little a little unnerving. I used to have nightmares about such things, but after thinking about it and researching my doctor, I mean, there's another story. The doctor is a little eccentric. He kind of looks like Stephen King. He wears matching socks and ties, but I found out he's some kind of professor at a medical school, and everybody that I've talked to, whether it's medical people or people who said their relatives had surgery with him, all have one word, and they say he's amazing. So that made me feel a lot better. And if I jumped right into this, I wouldn't have time for it to digest and do that research. So that's something on a personal note. For your character note, I guess you're going to think of A, the personal stuff, and B, what the procedure is about. So the unknown in your head and what you can imagine is always worse than what it is. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so they put me in a room to get into my hospital gown / jammies. The fun is about to begin. So here I am, looking incredibly chic. My hiney hanging out and waiting for them to do whatever else they have to do here to get me ready for surgery. Yeah. They brought me some heated blankets, which was nice. They wanted to make sure I was comfy and warm, which is good, and then they hooked me up with an IV, so
Things are moving along.
Things are moving along, indeed. So now I guess we're just waiting to go in. So for those who want to know the specifics, they come in after they hook the IV up. They said I'm going to get an antibiotic and a liquid Tylenol that goes through the IV that helps with post-op pain. The anesthesiologist said there will be some kind of tracheal tube going down my throat and might be sore for what did he say, like 6 hours or something. So that'll be fun. And that they will give me some meds pretty soon that will make me happy. It's like a spa. You get warm blankets and happy meds and your wrist cut open. But the doctor, actually the doctor being a little eccentric, and I also found out he was a Sherlock Holmes fan, so I'd rather have somebody that thinks deductively doing the surgery. In my world, as a writer, that's the kind of surgeon I'd probably get, but it also makes me feel a little more comforted because the fact that he's not a standardized robot. If it was a standardized kind of cold person, then I think I would be more nervous. I'm nervous, but I don't feel as nervous as I thought I would sitting here. So you can see how I feel when I come out of the surgery, and if all that changes if I wake up cursing and saying good times. Good times. So I'm waiting to pick up prescriptions. They're going to take about a half hour to fill them. As far as the operation went in the operating room, got on the table, they hooked me up to some stuff, and I was just out like a light. Next thing I knew, I was waking up kind of groggy. They gave me some cookies and apple juice and instructions. I can't use my arm at all until Monday. It's Wednesday now, so I'm going to have 4 days where they said the only thing I can do with my arm is wiggle my fingers, which I have to do periodically. I have to get up and walk around periodically and move my feet to prevent any chance of potential blood clots. And I'm a one-armed man for the next 4 days, so that's going to be tricky. I've got a sling and a big bandage, which is under my shirt. I'll film some more probably tomorrow or the next day to show the bandage, so I can't get it wet. I have to basically sponge bathe and see the doctor again on Monday. That's about how it went for the procedure, and I will give you updates soon.
Snack Master's going to be busy.
The Snack Master is going to be very helpful.
She gets to play nurse.
Yes.
Sponge baths.
So this is day 4 after my surgery. I'm up and about, but I'm still in a sling, and I still have the bandages on my wrist, which are coming off tomorrow, I hope. I don't know if he's going to just put a different bandage on, but I have to wear the sling. I can't use my arm. I'm supposed to wiggle my fingers like this from time to time, and he says the doctor says that's all he wants me to do with my hands. So it's been an interesting 4 days. I've had the first day I took pain pills because that's when the pain was most prevalent. I can't say that it was a ton of pain. It felt kind of like a headache in my hand with some sporadic little stingy sensations in the wrist. But I took the pain pills because who wants to be uncomfortable experiencing that? But the pain pills made me loopy and drowsy, and I tried to read and I kept nodding off, so that was a lot of fun. The next 2 days I only took the pain pills like morning and night. I figured I'd need something to get me through the night. In the morning it was a little hurty, so I took the pain pills. So I was only mildly loopy for parts of the day. Today I haven't taken any pain pills so far, so that shows you the digression of pain over the last few days. It still feels a little sore, but it's not constant. Occasionally a little stingy, but again, it's nothing severe, or I'd probably still be taking some pain pills, but I don't like to sit around nodding off all day, and the pain's not that bad. So what is carpal tunnel? It's basically a pinched nerve in your wrist, and there's a band of connective tissue over the median nerve, which something happens that it gets kind of thick and presses on the nerve and pinches it and can cause more damage over time. So what they do is they go in and they cut the band and they slice a piece off so it doesn't grow back, and then they stitch you back together. There is a risk of bleeding, so they put a tourniquet on your upper arm to kind of choke off blood flow since they're there cutting into your wrist. Surgery has come a long ways, and I have to say that in terms of all that, I did have back in the early 2000s a car accident, and there was some experience with doctors, and it was a really unpleasant situation. But I had never had anything like that happen to me, and I didn't know any better. This circumstance compared to that one, I took a little bit more time. I got more comfortable with the doctors. I found people that I thought were good and cared about what they did, and that made a huge difference. So I would say anybody that's got to have any type of surgery, if your doctor is making you feel uncomfortable, if they're not answering questions, or if they're just treating you like crap, find somebody else fast, because there are better doctors out there. So that's about it for the current update. I will film tomorrow when I go to the doctors and get this checked out, see whether I'm still in the sling, see what's underneath this bandage. And that will be, I think, my final update, and then I will start editing things and get this video up. The day has arrived to get rid of the bandages, and we're here at the doctor's other office They keep us running around, but today we will see what lies beneath the mummy hand bandages. I couldn't really film in the doctor's office. He did take the bandage off, so I don't have to use the sling, which is great. I've got a smaller bandage. I'll take pictures of it when I get home. I don't want to take the bandages off and have it loose while I'm out running around because he said it needs to be kept clean. I need to clean it every other day with peroxide and put some iodine on it, pat it dry and bandage it up. I have the freedom of no sling and no big bandage, but I still can't use the hand for another week until I see him again. So it'll be nice to actually be able to move my hand a bit, but I still can't use it. And I still can't shower or bathe. I'm still stuck with sponge bathing and keeping the hand completely dry because it could get wet and infected, and potentially if it gets damp, the wound could open back up. I'm still very limited for the next week. Okay, so yesterday I got the big bandage off, so I have a little more freedom with my hand. I think I explained some of this when I got out of the doctor's office yesterday. The hand, I went to the grocery store afterwards to pick up a few things. The blood was like rushing to my fingers when I had my hand down at all, and they're still a little bit puffy, and my hand looks all dry from where it was in the cast. That got a little bit painful because the cast was on there for a week and it was inhibiting movement, and now when all the blood starts flowing, now things are a little wonky. If I touch anything with my thumb, it gets kind of tingly and numb and strange, so I still can't use the hand for the next week. And then when I see the doctor again, we will discuss what the next phase is. I got a bit of a Frankenhand going on here. Ooh. Ugh. For those that like to get grossed out. Ew. It looks kind of gnarly. Okay, it's safe to look back now. You don't have to look away any longer. For writers, I would say the one thing that came in the aftermath that I think is kind of interesting and useful is just dealing with something that's an injury. Having the sling on for a week and my arm here, where it felt a bit relaxed or more protected, when I took the sling off, my arm just naturally wanted to go up here. And when I was walking through the store, I wanted to kind of put it there and hold it in the same position that it had been in the sling. I think that when you think of an injured character, their body language, the one doctor even said after I took the sling off and walked into the room, my arm was a little bit crooked. So you're not aware that you're doing these things, but your character is going to be protective of where they may be injured, or if there's something, whether it's a mental injury or a physical injury, there's still going to be those reactions and those triggers. So that's something to keep in mind. We don't always think about body language. Maybe actors do more than writers, but writers should watch actors. And if there's an experience like this, then think about how you're acting. And I saw, I understood quite well that I was being protective over it, that I didn't want to hit it on anything. That now with the big bandage off and the sling not being there, it felt more exposed. So you're walking through a store, or there's people around, or there's objects that you might bang it in, you start naturally kind of keeping it in a protective posture. As far as fear versus fact, the facts were not as bad as I imagined it. As I've said, it was an easier procedure than I suspected it would be. Even when I told that to the doctor, he said the imagination is always worse than what people go through. And I guess if anyone's going to understand that, it would be a surgeon, because they are doing these things to people, and that's terrifying for almost everybody. So they see people that's frightened all the time. How do you tell somebody that you're actually going to use a scalpel on, not to be afraid, or there's nothing to worry about? Things can go wrong in operations. You hope that you're not one of those people that it does happen to. But when you consider that people are having surgeries, probably by the thousands or even hundreds of thousands over the course of the planet every day, and those things that you hear go wrong, that make the news. It's a very small number compared to the things that actually have gone right. And yet, it's those things that stick with us because those things we hear in the media all the time. And what we hear through the media, stories, sticks with us. And as writers, it's our job to make those things seem as daunting as possible to our characters. And then when we're going through it, whether we realize it or not, we're going through the same thing. When the fear factor comes in, the imagination can go any place. And depending on your character, depending on their personal fears, it's always going to be exacerbated in some way. Remember what I said about being an artist and having somebody cut into my hand? That was a nightmare for many years. I thought about something happening to my hand. We're dependent on our faculties and we're dependent on our limbs. For a writer, they come out in our stories because what we experience, we write well about. And this experience, I hope you've learned something for your own personal sake, I guess, if you ever need a surgery, that it probably won't be it won't be what you've heard. Everybody's experience is going to be different. And when people go through something in their dull lives, people that don't read or write or have a creative outlet, and then something happens, they want to tell everybody. And that story gets bigger and bigger as they pass it on because this is what they've got. This is the most exciting or horrifying thing that's happened to them in their lives. As writers, we're imagining those things all the time.